Hey everybody, so welcome to episode 6 of Red's Ramblings. It's gonna be the first one I do with a guest. Guest gonna be my old therapist, Dr. Terry Miller. We're gonna be discussing getting his point of view as a black man about the situation that's going on around the country. So hopefully, guys, you people enjoy it. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. Give us feedback on everything, and yeah. So here comes the video.
I gotta admit that just a little awkward here, but because I don't do podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously pretty new to this as well, um, but I mean, I started it honestly just to have fun, but then all this stuff happened, and it's kind of hard to have fun when that shit's going on. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you try, and no matter where you look, you're seeing something, you're hearing something, and it's aggravating. I'm gonna try my best not to cuss a lot like I usually do. But I felt, because obviously me being a white guy, I'm only able to understand a certain amount. I can see it, but I'll never fully understand it, you know? So with the one that we did the thread on Facebook a few days ago, and as long as I've known you, I felt okay, obviously I can only speak on so much for this subject, but maybe I can get somebody who obviously is, been through whatever that world is. Because again, even you kind of get what I'm saying. Like it's with the thing I said yesterday. Even if I grew up with somebody all my life, the fact that if that person happened to be a different color, he lived a totally different world than I did, even though we grew up together. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right,
So I wanted to get somebody, the other side, the side that
right.
matters in this case. And I've known you obviously a good while. I mean, you're my therapist, or you were my therapist for my entire childhood. So I knew if anyone could speak and has seen the various ways from either your life, your kids' life, your
Right.
patients' lives, because I'm sure you've heard about it through their eyes as well, and seen it through their eyes as well. So I figured,
Exactly.
what better person to speak on it than
Right,
Terry Miller?
right. So interestingly, I would say that I've had an opportunity now that I'm 48 years old to kind of see um, and identify that this truly is a systemic problem. I've had a chance to experience this as a young man, where growing up as an African American, uh, very early on in life, my father would instill certain things or certain values in me about making good choices, or possibly even running into a situation where law enforcement is involved. um, Even talks about racism, um, and how um, hatred is taught as a young man, because my parents always taught me to be um, to treat people fairly, to always treat people equal, um, not to judge people, but pretty much just try to treat people like you want to be treated. Um, and pretty much growing up as a young black man in a young black community, um, I would identify with how, as African Americans, we had certain cultural norms um, that I think played a really big part into how we saw law enforcement, how we saw police. Um, uh, Basically, growing up as a young man, we saw a lot of police um, coming into the neighborhoods. Lots of times they would come in, and if they did make an arrest, oftentimes they would be very violent types of situations, occurrences. So we saw that a lot. Sometimes we saw that uh, police would come in and kind of deal with a situation. Sometimes it would help, um, I guess, in a sense, to where they would minimize or reduce crime, but also you would see an unrest, or somehow you would see somehow because of their um, involvement, somehow that was interpreted as unjust and unfair. Many times I've witnessed that as a young man. Now, being, as I said, 48, um, I was able to, of course, come out of that environment. And of course, I have a son now and a daughter. I have an 11-year-old son, and I have a 16-year-old daughter. And I also have a 32-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old son. But um, they had a very different experience than what I had as a child. Um, so even though they didn't experience the things that I experienced, or they didn't see the things that I experienced as a young man, where police officers kind of came into the neighborhood and made arrests or what have you. Um, they never got a chance to see that. However, through through social media, they have been able to, at least ask questions or understanding in terms of, why is this happening? Um, why is there racism in the world? I know my 11-year-old, um, he has been very inquisitive about it. He has grown up in a neighborhood where it's probably predominantly white Americans. He goes to a predominantly white school. Most of his friends are predominantly white. So it's with my daughter as well. Um, and so their only experience has been really positive because they went over for sleepovers. They've had friends to come over for sleepovers. Um, but here lately, there's been lots of tension and lots of situations that have brought about lots of questions. And so what I would say to that is that there's a conversation that obviously needs to take place. And for many years, we haven't been able to have that conversation. And now it seems like the time is right to have a conversation about race, about police brutality, addressing issues related to um, is it relevant to say Black Lives Matter? How important is that? And what does that mean? Um, what did Colin Kaepernick mean when he took a knee? What did he really mean? Why are so many people upset about what's been seen on national television? We witnessed a man pretty much being detained by four officers, and as a result, ended up losing his life because uh, there was too much pressure on the neck. Um, and I think that, moreover, people have seen this too much, but to see it on national television, uh, I would suggest that America has been traumatized, and we need to have a real serious conversation about what's going on, why, and how do we address it.
No, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we've been walking that fine line, and shit just different situations, different instances, different people kept it kept happening, and during that little time frame, that's wrong, that's horrible, blah blah blah. But then it kind of got something else would happen, or it got swept on the rug, or people stopped talking about it. So it's like, okay, in one ear out the other, basically. But then months later, whatever the case is, something happened again. It'd be the same thing. It's just always been the same thing. It's like, all right, yeah, we see this is bad. How dare they? How dare whoever, whatever the case is. Tomorrow's totally different though. It's not gonna happen again, or something like that. And it's now gotten to the point. It's like you keep saying that, but it keeps happening. You keep saying this isn't right. This needs to change. This and that. Like we're gonna do better, or we condemn this, or we condemn that, or thoughts and prayers and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, but what are you doing though? And it's aggravating as shit. It's pissing a lot. Obviously, it's pissing a lot of people off. Hell, I mean, it's pissing me off. I don't know what the hell's gonna come up out of this. And I know I said I wasn't gonna cuss, but I'm not gonna do as much.
I think one sensitive idea about what's really inflaming people, I believe, has to do with perception of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that people's perception of the problem is what is causing such an unrest between, some would argue, political lines,
Okay.
and, if you will, race in general. But when we look at law enforcement, many of us agree that we need the police to serve and protect. I think disproportionately African American men are incarcerated, arrested, killed, at a rate that is significantly higher than other races, and we're basing this pretty much based upon the size of the population and the incidences that occur across the board. So some would argue, white men might get shot more than black men. However, proportionately, population size wise, we know that's not necessarily true because there are more white men and black men.
Yeah,
So,
I
but
don't know if you saw the post I did yesterday, but I mean, I was at work when I did it. But yeah, I kept seeing that, like, somebody, because if you just flat out Google the statistics of people shot and killed by police in America, all it gives you is whites, black, yada yada. It doesn't give the percentage of white people versus black people in America, or Hispanics, or what have you. But
right.
so when you just look at that number, yeah, you look at, I think roughly, I posted it yesterday, but roughly it was like 400, 500, give or take, for white people, and like in the 200 range for black folks. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but you're missing a giant part of that problem. Because yeah, when you look at the white population, it was over 70%. We account for over 70% of the nation. while black people account for, I think it was like 13.3%.
Mm-hmm.
And my math is horrible, but no one corrected me, so I'm assuming it was pretty right. But it came out to roughly, now it didn't go into men versus women, any of that, but it was just white people, black people in general. But it came out to roughly, I think it was for last year, for 2019, it came out to roughly 1 in 200 something white people got shot and killed by police versus
Right. So
1 in
right,
30 for black people.
right. So when you look at the perception of that, and in other words, when you look at that raw data, and then you measure that raw data against what you see on television, then you have to really kind of take pause, because probably 75 to 90% of what you see on television in terms of arrests, uh, in terms of what we just recently witnessed with Ahmaud Arbery and with George Floyd, and I mean, there's just a host of others, but what we witness on television, you can even just take a small portion of that and look at that as a piece of information as to possibly this is why the perception is oftentimes um, it differs between races.
Yeah.
So as a black man, when I see this, I see police brutality. Sometimes I believe when other races see this sort of thing, they see police intervention with someone who possibly was so aggressive
Yeah.
that they deserve to be treated in that fashion.
Yeah. There was I don't remember who wrote it. It was an article I was reading yesterday on my way to work. And it was from a white person. He's a YouTube person. I'm not gonna put his name out there, but he put out a thing that he described it as writing it to his younger self, and how I guess after all this he's starting to realize the flaws in his views when he was young compared to, growing. Everybody matures, hopefully. um, and he was addressing that issue, and specifically he referenced the George Floyd situation, and he pretty much what he said was, talking to his younger self, it was like, I know as the younger me, you're probably looking at this as, okay, one, that is murder, but what did he do? What did he as George do to deserve that? Not as, this is just straight murder. You're automatically going to the officer side. Automatically, that's how he wrote it. He automatically, his younger self would have seen, okay, well, what did this man do for the officer to go that far? It wasn't how is this even, how are we even here in the beginning, in the first place? It was just automatically, well, there's got to be a reason for it. And there wasn't. And that was one of the things he was trying to, I guess he's matured enough to where he sees that now, is he's looking at it as like, there's not a defense for everything. You can't twist it all the time to try and make it fit the view that, for whatever reason you have, of, well, the cop had to have done it for a reason. No, it's not always the case. And
Right.
specifically for this, and for, like you were saying, a slew of others. I seen a post and it had like all of them, or not all of them, but 20 names and what they did when they died. And I didn't recall all those names, but the ones I did recall, I was like, yep, I remember that. And there was no reason for that. There was no reason you can come out with to say, yeah, but no, there's no buts in some of these situations. And it's happening frequent, and yet people say, well, you only, whatever it was, of like, racism not going away, it's just getting filmed, or racism not getting worse, it's just getting filmed. I guess in a sense, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit too much, but you kind of get what I'm saying. Like he was
I
seeing that
do.
on his view, and he
Right.
reconciled it with himself, thankfully. And hopefully there are others coming through with it. Because I would say on this particular instance, for sure, this one and the Ahmaud Arbery case, I've seen more people on my side, on the white people side, to vehemently call that shit out for what it was. On both cases, that was absolute murder, no excuse, screw that shit. That those men should still be here today. I've seen it more, but like it to an extent, like I was actually kind of, I don't want this to come off wrong, but I was kind of proud of definitely. I was proud of the ones that were finally standing up and seeing it through the way that I've seen it my entire life. Because yeah, like I don't fully understand. I will never fully understand everything. I've never lived through it. White privilege is a thing, right? There is no way around that. I've done so much stuff when I was younger, that I should have been arrested for, and I'm just gonna assume it was because I was white. I don't know. I never got like, hey, kid, you're white. Here, go ahead. But multiple pullovers with suspensions, multiple pullovers with no license, with no tag, all this type of stuff. There was even one time, I'm not going to throw out the names of who all was involved, but it was like 22 or 23, and I had two friends over, and they were both under 21, so they weren't legally able to drink, but we were all drinking, right? So we were all drinking. One of them got sick and ended up accidentally calling the cops, or calling 911. So long story short, cops come, ambulance gets called to send this one person who's throwing up really bad, right? And again, I'm the only one of legal age. So right there, that's whatever you call it, something with minors and underage drinking. I can't remember. I can't think of the actual word. But that is like, how do you not arrest me for that? Like in my mind, when the cops were on the way, I was like, oh, I'm getting arrested. I got two, underage, under 21 people over here drinking, drunk, want to get sent to the hospital, and I still don't get arrested.
Well, this is why I say it's a systemic problem,
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily clearly defined as something that might take place in a situation on occurrence. It's more kind of it begins with really portraying uh, the villain. Who's the villain? Who's the villain? Who's the villain? And so, what America oftentimes sees is African American men going to jail, African American men not being able to support and provide for their families, African American men basically um, taking up 60% of uh, incarceration among in all of the prisons across the USA. Um, this negative stigmatism that is often kind of displayed. Now, what I will say is that um, you know I think systemically that plays a part into how African American men see themselves and how people see them. And so I think, too, until we really have a really, really deep conversation, what you will have those who uh, have the perception that when they encounter a black male, somehow there's a threat of danger that's assumed. How do you take that away? I think um, that starts early on. Uh, we haven't had a conversation about that to address that through social media, through news coverage. Um, Even today, we still see, through the Ahmad Marbury's case and George Floyd's case, we still see that even when a young black man or a man is murdered on national television, that you know we can see all of the pieces to that, but then we still are very divided about whether or not his life uh, was worthy, and whether or not the police, you know, treated him in the best manner that he could have treated him. We're having that conversation. Uh, Whereas it would be totally different. It would be totally different if we witnessed a white person being murdered on television with, his or her arms handcuffed to the back. So, systemically, I think there's a lot of things that have to be addressed. I mean, starting from kindergarten up until, late adulthood. There's some things systemically that really have to be addressed. Um, I don't share, political views across the board, all Democrat or all Republican. I would really kind of identify with being an independent, but surely there's a conversation that needs to be had about the systemic issues that really align with police brutality and unjust incarceration of black men.
Mm.
So we got to have a conversation. I think that one of the things that you have brought up that I thought was very interesting is that, you know, you have used your platform to acknowledge that, there is unjust. And even in you acknowledging that, you've gotten resistance from people that I'm assuming that you know very well. Or at least you thought you knew very well.
I've some like the way I try to go about hold on, I got something popped up on my screen. Okay, I don't know what that was. So the way I try and go about, especially if I post something, especially now, if it's going to be to address what's going on right now, I try to only post stuff that basically is indefensible. That way, even if you try it, I have plenty of ammo ready to say why you're wrong. Here's how you're wrong. And even if it gets to the point to where they still don't see it, at that point I can't help it. If you're so dead set on opposing something or agreeing with some of the stuff that's going on, you're just hopeless. You can't change everybody, and to those individuals, it's like whatever. I mean, it's there's nothing really you can do. But yeah, like I try to put out stuff that has fact behind it. That this it's not necessarily an opinion, because opinions you can go either way. Obviously, hypothetical pieces can go either way. But I try to put out stuff that's actual fact, even if feelings and emotions are obviously intertwined with it. A fact is a fact, whether you agree with it or not. That doesn't change that this is what this is. And yeah, there are some people that slowly, when you talk with them, you can correlate or use certain analogies that they come to an agreement, and you're like, all right, when you put it that way, I got that. So especially, yeah, when it comes to people that I know, I've had some talks with one, and one in particular that they didn't necessarily agree, but they weren't full blown against it. So because I knew that person, I was able to put it into an analogy that, okay, so if you do it this way, that's what's going on. If you match this up in your world like this, it's the exact same thing as what's going on out there. And sometimes you have to repeat that over and over again. You're like, it's this. For you, it's that. For them, it's the same shit. And slowly, you'll either it sticks in their head to where hopefully later on, how somebody you'll hear something in the day and it don't hit you. And then later on, you're like, damn, that was right, or he was right, she was right, whatever the case is. So even if at the end of whatever that conversation was, they didn't automatically come out and say, you know what, man, you're right, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. I hope, obviously, that seed is somewhere in there, and later on, something happens, and you're like, I remember, Red saying something about this, and everything clicks. And if I can do that to one person, and that person does to two, or whatever the hell the case is, I feel like I've done something. It's not going to fix everything. It's never going to fix everything. Just talking to one individual people. And I don't believe, especially today, there's no, there, boom, here it is, done, fixed. No, obviously that's impossible. You got too many people that need to change their views that will never change their views. But
well, I think people, yeah.
Then hopefully later on, something good, obviously the fix, this shit, I feel, and I want to, because I think you said you're 48, so you're 18 years older than me, which I thought you were older, to be honest. But I would say in my 30 years of life, things have gotten better. Obviously, they've gotten better slowly, but they have seemed to get better. Again, this is from a white man's point of view. In your 48, would you say things have, to an extent, gotten better? They're going the right direction, even though obviously we have dips here and there, like this shit is a huge dip. But overall, things
when you say getting better, are you referring to in general, everything in general, or are you referring specifically to racism and police brutality?
I'm referring specifically to racism.
Okay.
Now, you can encapsulate police brutality into that, but because obviously police brutality would go down with racism going down as well. Those are tied in.
What I would say is that racism by number, just by sheer number of people who might participate in racist behavior or have racist or Semitic types of views. Okay, so number wise, you may have more people in this country who are more liberal and more open to race than you may have had in the 60s. Okay, but the level of racism or the intensity and even the frequency of racism, I think, is pretty much about the same. And I'll give you an example. Of course, I own my own practice. Okay, and I'm 48 now, so at 46, I would say 2 years ago, I went to my office one morning, which was about 6:30. I wanted to get there early so I could open the office. I had a lot of paperwork I wanted to do before I got my day started. But long story short, I went inside my building. I came back out to get my briefcase, and when I came back out, the police was outside waiting. And the door was open. I had just opened the door, and basically, when they came, they asked me for ID, yada yada. I assisted them. I gave them what they initially asked me for, but like many people have reported, the officer took his gun off his side. He asked me to keep my hands shown. Um, Basically, he treated me like I was breaking and entering into the building. um, he asked if he could go into the premises. I said no. He went anyway. But it was just that type of interaction that that I felt, wow, geez. I mean, 2 master's degree, doctorate degree, and more than 25 years of working with youth and adolescents. Still, you encounter these kinds of situations. And I I actually knew the officer's supervisor because I had done work with his supervisor in the community before. So that didn't seem to help much. That didn't seem to help much. But it's just a reminder that, you know, when you start your day as a Black man, you go from point A to point B, unless you're wearing a title, you're seen as a Black man. And it seems as if that many times professional Black men have the same experience as Black men who may have not achieved or amassed some of the things that some educated Black men have. They have a common theme when it comes to interacting with the police. So, and keep in mind, we just witnessed a very serious kind of thing. It's like, I can't even bring myself to watch that.
Yeah.
How do you watch that and not be upset by it? I mean, granted, if he wasn't Black and if he was an animal, I probably would still feel a certain kind of way that somebody would kill someone in an inhumane way. Now, if there was an exchange, he was shooting at the police officer was shooting at him, great. But to see that, it was almost like a modern lynching in 2020.
Yeah, that shit was painful. That something's wrong with you if that didn't hurt you on the inside somewhere. If something didn't pull something in you to like, fuck.
So I would say, and then let me add this. As I told you before, I grew up indigent, living in an impoverished community. My mom and my dad, they worked jobs, but I was a little different than the environment that was centered around me, which is why I kind of made it out of that situation. But now my children, um, I would say they're middle to middle class. I wouldn't say we're low middle class. I wouldn't say we're upper middle class. I would say we're middle class at least. Um, they have grown up as privileged children, pretty much. Their counterparts have slept in their beds. They've slept in their beds. They've had sleepovers. Um, and many of their friends are beginning to seemingly have a different view than my children do. My children seeing the same thing I'm seeing. They're hurt by it. but they're getting responses from children their age that's very different uh, than what you might expect. And so, again, you have that question: is racism taught, or or is it a bigger issue? Is it systemic in that these ideas are being empowered and embedded into the minds of people through television, social media, through um, just what's being recorded on film and on paper. We had a situation where the young lady did the bird call thing, or she called the police for
Yeah.
the bird watcher, whatever that situation was. Okay, how powerful was that to see her do that with seemingly knowledge that it would be effective?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna shoot you or kill you. It's gonna be worse than that. I'm gonna call the police, and when they come, you're gonna have big problems.
Yeah.
So, and she did apologize. I don't think, honestly, I'm not gonna defend her,
Yeah.
and I
No.
know hindsight is 2020, but I will tell you this: maybe she had an opportunity to really think,
Mm.
do a self-assessment. Hopefully, she came to some conclusion that what she may have done was bigger than what she imagined.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, this is just something you could do,
Yeah. It's just.
not realizing the impact,
Yeah.
the seriousness. It could cost somebody their life.
Um.
Now, did she know that? I can't say that she would have known it would have cost somebody a
Yeah.
life, but we do know that it could
Yeah.
cost a person their life.
Yeah. That's one of the things I don't understand, especially with instances like that. With that one, not like the George Floyd type things, but the instances where you got this white person, this whatever person, for whatever reason, sees like what was the other one? I think it was a DoorDash. A DoorDash guy was delivering DoorDash, had DoorDash. My wife does DoorDash. Had DoorDash stuff, had it in his hand, like, hey, I'm going, and the dude is questioning what the hell he's doing there with a gun in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously working. The man's what and he's trying to call the cops over that, and then like the bird lady, or what was that one with a picnic? They were just out grilling, fucking grilling. They're having a good time, and for whatever reason you don't like it, leave. You go home. You go off. You walk the up. They're here having fun.
Right. I
Ain't
saw
gonna
that.
follow you. They're grilling. They're having their family.
He did a good thing.
Yeah. That's that. Those are the situations I don't understand, because those have been coming out a lot, and you would assume, you would hope, imagine that everyone at some point has seen at least one, to where, hey, don't be doing this type of shit. There's no reason, unless you legitimately feel for whatever reason, but just a family having fun out at a park grilling out, or a man, whatever the bird guy was doing, he was just walking, I'm assuming, in the park. I haven't really watched that video, but they're off just doing their own thing. Leave them the hell alone. And when if you want to start the call, okay, if you want to start the call, let's say for real you think something's going on, but you want to start the call, think for a second, be like, if I'm wrong, what could happen to this person? especially if you're going to
Absolutely.
lie about it like the bird lady. Especially how open she was about that, saying, well, I'm going to tell him you were going to do this, or I'm going to tell him this.
Yeah, I mean, he would have been arrested. It would have been alleged that he
Yeah.
attempted to harm, and he would have probably gotten a record. Maybe they would have found her guilty. Maybe. I'm not gonna say that a judge wouldn't have seen or been able to read between the lines. I mean, for one, I don't want to lose faith in our judicial system. I don't. I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah.
I think that America has just been wounded,
Mm-hmm.
and this flesh wound that has just been endured is bleeding, and America needs intervention.
Yeah.
This is not just like a run of the mill kind of thing. It's it's trauma,
Mm.
and I think the people in charge of this great nation should understand that this particular incident needs attention
Yeah.
before it becomes infected. Now, will we become a greater nation by getting past this? Yes, but the fact still remains. You will revisit this over and over and over and over again until you systemically address the perception
Mm.
that's attributed to Black men.
Yeah.
Now, again, well, let me just shift this a little bit.
Okay.
Now, just kind of go in detail what I mean by perception. So, police comes, they do a drug bust, they find $100,000, 50 kilos of cocaine, weapons, XYZ. Well, they didn't grow that in their backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't grow any of that in the backyard. Yet it's illegal, but you that's the way to demonize people. You put them out front, they go to jail. But now you never hear about the bigger fish that's bringing it in.
Yeah.
So Black men are drug dealers. That's the perception.
Mm.
It's like that's what they do. They don't make it, but they do sell it. Why are they selling it? They don't have jobs. Some of them don't. Some of them, I mean, I'm not justifying their actions, but systemically, the system is wired in such a way that when blame is placed, it's often placed in a way that leaves an impression that Black men, Black people are troublemakers, dope dealers, thugs,
It
uh,
it puts a
people
shadow over
that
all of them
don't
for no
deserve
reason.
freedom. Yeah.
You know,
So systemically, it has to be addressed.
yeah, yeah. Do you think in our lifetime we will get there? Do we think we'll get halfway there?
You know what? I'm hopeful. Um, I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can imagine a world where everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody, I mean, we live in a world where everybody is different. Everybody looks different, but for some reason, we're just identifying what color. But I envision a world where everybody is different. You have blue people, green people, red people, orange people, and we're so diverse that no one race is more dominant than the other.
Yeah.
It's just a galactic kind of rule, if that makes sense.
No, no, I get it. Because the way I was talking to a friend the other day at work about it was, and the reason I asked you the question earlier on, do you think it's gotten better? And you kind of went the point I was going out with the number. You see, the numbers gone down, but the actions are obviously still there, and I have no problem agreeing with that whatsoever, because I definitely agree the numbers are going down. So I feel whether in our lifetime, sure as hell by our kids' lifetime, with the number completely going down, because obviously you got some people up in age who are just hell bent on their beliefs, and they're not those people. It's like, was it, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like those people, that's it for them. They ain't gonna be around for much longer, and hopefully either their kid or their grandkids, even if their negative views are not as hardcore, even if they softened a bit, because the other thing I was talking to somebody about is, okay, there's multiple versions of racism. There's the two I'm talking about here at this point was, you got the ones that no matter what, no, like that person's not white or that person's not whatever color you are, no, don't always look down on whoever that person is. All right, so you got that across the board, all other people other than your own are not right. They're below you, blah, 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 all that kind of bullshit. And then you got the ones that are like, hey, he's my friend, blah, 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 all that, but do not date my son and or daughter. And that's still, you might be cool with him as your friend, as your kid's friend. You're fine with all that. Y'all hang out, blah, blah, blah. But the interracial stuff is a no-no. And that's still, you can't call yourself not racist if that's still in it. If that's what your child wants to do, the hell are you to say no? And definitely more and more of that is becoming okay. I got a lot of friends, and I'm sure you, with all the 48 years you've been alive, you've seen it more and more too. There are a lot more of those relationships out there. And a lot more of those kids are probably gonna grow up and be like, well, my mom's black, my dad's white, or whatever the case is. Automatically, like those children, I feel, are born into a world where it's probably impossible to be racist. Not necessarily to say, but it'll be hard pressed to be racist when that is your upbringing. Obviously, that you can probably go into, well, was their upbringing good? All right, yeah, but overall, that I would be hard pressed to say that those kids would end up like the old timey people that just can't grow the hell up, basically. So like I said, I would feel, because hell, I know my kid's in kindergarten, and he had a crush on a little girl up the road. She happened to be black, and I joke with him all the time. He's like, yeah, like, no, you like Amara, so my kid, I ain't worried about doing that. Like, he's fine. But I feel as long as more and more people go that route, that is definitely one good trend we have going on in this country. Sadly, though, it sucks. I don't want to say we just have to wait it out, because that's horrible to just wait it out. But luckily, that is going, and there's that number's not stopping. I don't see that number stopping. That numbers of the non-racist people are gonna go up, and slowly, all of them are going to eventually outnumber all the racist bigots and all the assholes and whatnot in the world. But I think once we get to the point where those numbers are like of age to voice their opinions, like what's happened now, if you look at the peaceful protests, it's a mix of everybody. There's a lot of everybody in those. And 10, probably even 20 years ago, that probably wasn't the case. Yeah, you probably had in racial protests, you probably had a white person here or there, or whatever other than black person here or there. But I'm sure that number has grown a lot more in the peaceful ones that are going on today. So hopefully, my hope is that more of those people decide, yo, I got power in who I choose for this seat, this council, this whatever the hell in the political spectrum, and fights hard for that, to where you go with the number, then you get the policies as well. So you got your number, then you get the policies as well, and it's just straight up a lot faster than if you just waited it out. You need those same people to get in positions of power to make that change. And
You do.
I see it happening. I see it more and more because obviously with the protests now, I'm sure a lot of people are seeing that the problem is with who's in charge. You got a lot of still old timies and who aren't giving up that power, because who wants to give up power? Once you got power, it is hard to take that away. It's hard to voluntarily give that up and step aside and let the youth or the new idea come through. But that's what not just the country has done throughout history. That's what the world throughout its entire history has done. It's progressed, it's improved, it's gotten better. And it's taken a long time. It's going. It's got a lot more to go. But I do see it happening, especially again once those people start seeing, hey, I can do something. I can get these racist bitches out, or whatever the hell the case is.
Right.
That's
And I do agree with you, because I really feel like excuse me, that's my dog.
It's all good.
I agree with you. I feel like racism is an illness.
Mhm.
And as I said before, a lot of what's taking place now, even, you know, in the, you know, considering the fact that we witness a person's death and we see the riots, but it's becoming more about political
Mhm.
lines and how we see racism. And I
Mhm.
think the people in office, or the people who are elected to office, can be the cure,
Mhm.
um, because racism is an illness. And what we inject into the body of this government will either cure
Yep.
and heal, or it will become more infected and diseased.
Mhm.
And I think people have to think about not just prosperity, because this is a great nation, but as a good book would say, man shall not live by bread alone.
Yep.
And by that, we know that uh, there are some principles, some humanity principles that we must strive to settle and to rectify, so that we can be a healthy country,
Mhm.
not a country that's divided and diseased.
I I agree there. I mean, it's like everyone said, you know, we didn't. Everyone built this country. Everybody. There's no one person that said, "Hey, I'm gonna do all this." No, you had to count on the individual help of everybody. So
Right.
everybody's got a hand in it. It will not and cannot function properly unless everybody's involved.
Right.
It's no way. You can't put
Included.
one person, one side, one idea in charge and be like, this is it. This is the way it's going to go. This is the way it's going to work. No. It's never worked for anyone like that. It's never worked. You
Right.
got to collectively have a whole bunch of opposing ideas and come to an agreement on this is the best route. And that's not happening. I don't really want to turn this more into a political thing. So,
Right.
but as a country, and especially when it comes to, you need everybody.
Right. You do. It's important. Or, I would go as far to say that we are a country that oftentimes is considered the great melting pot. So, with that being said, our diversity is what makes us strong.
Exactly.
Our difference is what gives us a platform to be the strongest country in the world. Um, because when you think about it, we have everything. We have athletes, we have food. You name it. We're just great.
Yeah, if you got
In that, yeah,
yeah, if you got the drive to go for it, you can do it. You know, um, but you got to bring everybody along. You can't just exclude an entire group of people or multiple groups of people and thinking you're going to make it. There's just no,
right,
because if you get to the top and the whole way up there you thought you counted on these people, if you were somehow able to look back at everyone who helped, whether you realize it or not, you're able to look at who all helped you get there a little bit.
right,
Where again, when
right,
at the time you saw it, if you were able to, like a Ghost of Christmas Past type situation, to go back and see who all helped you there, it was a little bit of everybody. You might have had
a
more
little
of
bit of
one than
everybody.
the other, but it was a little bit of everybody to help
That's
you
right.
where you're at.
That's right. I do agree with you there. I agree. I do agree with you there.
Well, Terry, I'm hungry to be honest. Um,
It's good. I enjoyed it. I appreciate you inviting me to your
yeah,
podcast.
I mean, you're the
I
first
hope,
guest,
hopefully,
and again,
yeah.
I think what I've. Do you remember how old I was when you first became my therapist?
Interestingly, Jamie, you were about 10 years old. You were
Yeah.
about 10 years old.
Yeah.
And you correct me if I'm wrong. You correct me. My dog gets excited whenever my daughter leaves the house. So, but just stop.
So.
Um, you were about 10 years old, and I don't want to. I want you to correct me about something. I don't want to embarrass you, but I want you to correct me about something.
All right.
You and your brother look very different.
Yeah.
And you and your brother oftentimes antagonize you because you did look different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you really you had a hard time with that.
I mean, if you want to go that route, yeah. I mean, I'll give you that because I mean, yeah, I'm the only redhead, and at the time, yeah, I was a big kid, or I was on the bigger side than obviously I
Yeah,
am now. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I give you that.
yeah.
I
So
can see
I,
that for
I
sure.
think I brought that up. I brought that up to say that many times it's difficult for us to see injustice
Mm-hmm.
until we've had an experience with injustice.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, when people have an encounter with injustice, they can truly see through a different lens. And I would just conclude by saying that, you know, many of the people, many of the people who may in fact watch this podcast may want to just do a self-assessment
mm-hmm.
and maybe consider if they've ever felt a time in their life when they felt that may have been treated differently because of their appearance or their status, their race, or
Yeah.
their finances. Because I think, if they haven't had that, if everything has always been on the up and up,
Mm.
this might be a reason why it's difficult for them to
Yeah.
see. And so you know, do you have to have an experience to know what injustice is? You know, it just leaves a question mark there.
Yeah.
But I would definitely just kind of end on that note, because I think that where your heart is in all of this, truly, I think that if people was to know about you from a personal standpoint, they would definitely understand your position and why you have those viewpoints that you do, which I believe that your heart is one that says that you believe people should be treated equally and fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, much love to you, brother. I hope you have a lot of success in doing your podcast. And I know that you're going to be fair and you're going to be balanced. So I look forward to hearing more from you soon.
I appreciate that, Terry. You have a good
And
one.
you too.